I am very famous as the husband of Bonnie Cappuccino. My name is Fred. Bonnie and I met in 1953, and my love life before that had been a shambles. I would get serious with a girl, and then I would do something stupid or say something stupid, and I would get the axe. And this happened over and over and over until I met Bonnie, and I would do something stupid, and she would say, "Fred, don't do such stupid things." And so she agreed to marry me, and of course that was a big important thing with me. And so she's been putting up with me now for 63 years. We have been married.
So when we were first married, we had a small house, but it had several bedrooms in Chicago, Illinois. And I felt that we needed to have some children in this house. And we read that in Cook County Hospital in Chicago, there were many children who were born and the parents did not keep them, so we applied to be a foster family for one or two of these children. That didn't work out, so then Fred remembered when he was in Japan, there was a Japanese woman who was rescuing mixed race children from the American GIs and Japanese women. In the meantime, we had had a son born to us, and when our daughter Machiko came, who was Japanese and black, he was 1 and she was 5 years old.
So back in Chicago, 1954, Bonnie and I had decided to have 2 children born to us. Only 2, and adopt 1 or 2, but she gets carried away, and it was 1 more and 2 more. And it didn't stop until we had adopted 19 children. But getting back to the beginning, when this 5-year-old came from Japan, I was minister of a congregation, a Methodist congregation, and they were not ready for a black child, and so we were forced out of that congregation, and we had to go to another congregation which wanted to integrate. So then it went on from there till we had 19 adopted children. And that's all outlined.
2 born to us.
And 2 born to us. That's all outlined in this wonderful book, Bonnie and Her 21 Children, by her long-suffering husband, Fred Cappuccino. That's me. We came to Canada in 1967. At that point, we had 7 children and 5 sons, so it was good to leave the States, which had the draft, and we loved Canada. But Bonnie was not satisfied with just 7 children, so we adopted many more children, and then after she ran out of steam with 21 children in total, we decided to go to India because we were both very interested in Mahatma Gandhi and his teachings. We felt that we made a pilgrimage over to India, and we found that there were many children over there who needed some kind of help. And so we established a small home up in Gujarat state and started with a few children. Then later, through the years, we got more. A village or place would invite us to go, and we would start another home in another place. So we finally have 9 children's homes, one in Nepal, one in Tibet, one in Bangladesh, and 6 in different parts of India. An interesting story is that Bonnie there are about 1,300 children, and many of them don't have family at all, and some have maybe an uncle or a grandmother or something like that. And in one of our homes, there were 2 young people who decided they wanted to marry each other, which was quite unusual. Usually they marry outside there, but these 2 were serious, and they said to Bonnie, "We would like to marry each other." And she said, "Well, you better go and ask your great uncle." So the boy went and asked his great uncle. He said, "I would like to marry this young woman." And the uncle said, "Oh no, you cannot marry her. I'm so sorry, but at age 5, you were betrothed to this other girl." And so he was so sad and so despondent, and he went and told the girl, and she was also despondent. They're both crying. Finally, the girl said, "Who is this other girl that you are betrothed to?" And he told her the name, and the girl screamed. She said, "That's me. That was my name before I came to Child Haven." So it turned out that they were able to get married, and of course all the several hundred children in that home and all of the staff and all of the community came to the marriage.
So we have a home for destitute Tibetan children in New Delhi, and we have a home in Gujarat State near Gandhian. Also one near Mumbai.
Near Penn.
Yeah, near Penn, small town. And we also have one in Hyderabad, India. And our largest home is in Kaliampundi, which is near Chennai. And we were invited to come to Kaliampundi by Ramakrishna Reddyar, who was a great freedom fighter and a wonderful example for our children.
He was Ramakrishna Reddyar was a fascinating fellow. He is dead now, but he told us he was influenced by Vinoba Bhave, who was in the Bhujan movement. He was a disciple of Mahatma Gandhi, and he went around to many villages, and he said to the people, "Consider me your youngest son and give me the acreage that I can use, and we'll pool it all together and distribute to the landless peasants." And so Ramakrishna Reddyar said, "I will give 300 acres. And so then he made this commitment. Then he went and told his wife, and she said, "No, why are you giving away the land that belongs to your children?" And he said, "Well, I will not eat." And she had to sign the paper. The land somehow was from her side of the family. So she said, "No, I won't sign." And so he said, "I'm not going to eat until you sign the paper." So then he didn't eat for first day, second day, third. About the 4th day, she said, "Oh, you stubborn man, here, eat your supper, I will sign the paper." And he said, "No, first sign the paper, then I will eat." And when he was telling this story to us, he was sitting there, and his wife was sitting at his feet. And he laughed as he told the story, but his wife didn't laugh. But we all, in the whole community, they were worshipped as just the great saints, and they finally, what they gave us was enough to to start a home where now there are almost 300 children.
So when we start each home, and we're not starting any new ones now because the ones we have keep expanding and growing, but before we can start a home, I visit 4 times a year for at least a year to be sure that the local people are welcoming us. And in the beginning, when they see someone coming from North America, they think we are coming to be a missionary and change the children's religion. When they understand that we are Gandhian and we respect all of the religions and we don't change any religion, and that we treat boys and girls the same, and we practice nonviolence, and we're a vegetarian home and simple living, then they welcome us. But it is not easy to start a new home, and usually we operate on a shoestring, which means that we don't have money in the bank. As the money comes in, and I am overseas spending this money on the homes, Fred is struggling to raise the funds.
We have wonderful committees in 20 different cities in Canada, and we have fundraising dinners, and we raise now about $2 million a year. But going back to the beginning of, for example, our home in Nepal, at one of the fundraising dinners in Toronto, a fellow by the name of Kunjar Sharma, who is still the honorary consul general of Nepal in Canada, he came to our dinner and he said, "Oh, you must come to Kathmandu. I will take you to Kathmandu and introduce you to various friends." So Bonnie went with him to Kathmandu, Nepal, and he introduced to various places, and we rented a small building, and so the Nepal home started there around 1993.
1993, yeah.
And after it grew, we moved to several places, and then finally we got funding from various friends to buy some property. Well, there were 2 lots. One was given to Child Haven by Dr. Yantamani Pradhan, who is an eye doctor, and he got his niece to give the other lot for what she paid for it many years ago. So that way we were able to have 1 or 2 acres, and we put up a beautiful building there, and that's where our Nepal home is now. And it survived the earthquake because we had wonderful architects. There were 2 women who were the architects. One was American and one was Nepali. They built a home that was earthquake resistant, and all around the other buildings collapsed, but the Child Haven building remained very good. And in fact, some of our staff lost their homes, so we put up another small building just recently inaugurated with 7 apartments up and 7 apartments down, so our staff has a home temporary until they can rebuild. And the children there they go through high school, and then Bonnie and the manager work out a plan with each child what they're going to do for their vocational training. A very few go into university if they are, first of all, very intelligent, and secondly, if they are focused and committed on studying, then a few get into nursing or some other university thing. But all of them have some kind of training that they can find a job. In the beginning of our Bangladesh home was because we went to an Indian restaurant in Ottawa one of the waiters, a fellow named Salim. He must have been about 18 or 19. He had recently immigrated to Canada from Bangladesh. And when he saw us there, and he saw Bonnie's jewelry, and he just became so interested. What are you doing? And so we told him about the program in India with various children's homes. And he said, oh, you have to come to my village. You must come to my village. And every time that we went to that restaurant, he would say, when are you coming to my village? And his village is Noakhali. And Noakhali is a very famous place where Mahatma Gandhi had a fast to try to overcome the violence between the Hindus and Muslims, a very famous place. So anyhow, finally, after many entreaties by Salim, he said, well, first of all, let's go to my family home. So he went with her to his family home. And this was in Chittagong. So the home was like a double home. There was a doctor living in one side, and he encouraged the doctor to move someone else, so Child Haven moved in, and that was our first home. Now we are in both sides. He bought an apartment in Dhaka for his mother, so Child Haven occupies both sides of this home in Chittagong. There are now how many children?
Oh, there's about 73.
About 73 children.
And we have a school, a Montessori school for very young children, and invite the community children. Yeah. So we have about 150 children in the school, which goes through grade 4.
And there is a local imam who comes and he teaches the Muslim children. There are also Hindu children, and we have someone we respect the religion of the Hindu children, some Buddhist children, some tribal children, some Christian children. We respect. No child is allowed to change their religion.
We have a very good friend, Wanda and Angela, in Ottawa. At that time, Wanda was the only Tibetan person in Ottawa, and we met him at a dinner that was honoring Dr. Yantamani Pradhan from Nepal, because they knew him from Nepal also. And later, Angela, Wanda's wife, asked me when I go to Nepal, would I please take something to Wanda's uncle, who was the head of a monastery in Kathmandu. So of course I agreed. I was happy to do that because I'm very interested in the Buddhist religion also. And while I was visiting Wanda's uncle at the monastery, someone came from Tibet, from their home monastery in Tibet near Lhasa. And he mentioned that there was a children's home for very destitute children. I think at that time they had 8 children there. And we asked if we could go and visit. So from that first visit, now we are supporting the children there. And because originally we had 24 children, many of those children have since graduated from university and college. And the Chinese government has clamped down, and they do not allow any non-governmental organizations to have a children's home. So we are supporting the local children in the community whose family cannot afford to send them to school, and also some elderly people.
The Chinese government has taken all of the children from all of the orphanages in Tibet and put them into residential schools. And we had some... I thought of something when you were talking, now I can't think of it. When Bonnie found that there were 8 children in an orphanage up in Tibet, she wanted, in the worst way, she wanted to get up there. But she found it was difficult to get a visa to go there. And she tried various ways. Finally, she found that there was a travel agent in Kathmandu who was issuing group visas. If you had 4 or 5 people, he could give you a visa to go to Lhasa. So that was how she got it there in the first place. And so she was able to take some money up and help this small orphanage. And it grew from 8 children to about 24 before the children were taken into residential schools.
Our main goal for Child Haven is to raise these children to have a good future. So we provide for the children whatever their parents would have wished to provide if they were able. So loving care, good food, medical care, a good education is really the foundation. Without a foundation of education, they really cannot rise out of the poverty that their parents were living in.
Also, we feel that a Gandhian approach and a Gandhian basis is important for these children. And I think even many of the people in India do not appreciate the huge, great moral strength of Mahatma Gandhi. He was one who was able to get independence from India from England, from Great Britain, which was the greatest power at that time in the world. And India was the most populous country at that time. And by a nonviolent approach, he was able to get independence. And when it was all over, there were friendly relations between the two countries. And this is unique in the history of the world. But to have the children raised and know that they have value in their own person, and the girls and boys are equally important and treat each other with respect. This is so important. And the vegetarian food, the idea of nonviolence, this is so important. And I'm hoping that people in India especially, but all over the world, should go back and look again at Mahatma Gandhi and the great towering moral strength that he has given to us. One thing that happened with Bonnie and me is that there was a UNESCO meeting in Paris, and some friends nominated Bonnie and me to receive an award. We received the award for the teaching of human rights. So the telegram came to our house, and I was looking at the telegram, and I gave it to my son Tulsi Das, and he looked at it, and he thought it was something I intended him to throw into the fire. So he put it into the wood stove, and it was gone. But this was a very important award for Bonnie and me about the teaching of human rights. And I have written this book about Bonnie and her 21 children. It's the story of how our children came to us one by one. We had made a solemn agreement, I thought, my wife and I, that we would have 2 children born to us and maybe adopt 1 or 2. But she gets carried away, and there was 1 more and 2 more and 1, and she finally ran out of steam at 19 adopted children. So this is that story. There is a chapter about Child Haven and how Child Haven got going, and book 2 will be more about the stories of Child Haven. Of course, I could talk about that all night long. Child Haven is full of stories. All of the children who come to us, and there are about 1,300, at any given time that we are helping. Since we have been going from 1985, we have many who have graduated and are out making their contribution in the community, perhaps 1,000 or 2,000. But one story that happened at our largest home, Kaliampundi, near Kanchipuram, near Chennai, was when the tsunami hit a couple of years ago. It came and it wiped out the villages on the coast. And the village was just pushed inland and the boats were just demolished. We were able to help 20 of these children. They were all orphaned. They came to our home. They were in terrible mental condition. They were crying and they had lost their parents. They had lost their livelihood. The homes were gone. We happened to have at Kaliampundi a big pile of sand. And they asked, could they sleep on the sand? Of course, they could sleep on the sand. Now, in a case like this, over in this part of the world, if there are children who are traumatized, we would send in a team of psychologists and counselors to do grief counseling with them. We didn't have that facility there. But after a few days, they saw all the other children around who were running and shouting and singing, and they knew that these other children had also come from traumatic situations. Either the mother had died or there was some tragedy. So gradually they came and there was a healing cushion in the home itself of all these other children and the loving staff. So we're quite pleased with how that worked out. Another point to make is that there are so many people in this world who are gathering money and gathering all kinds of power to themselves, and somehow happiness eludes them. My wife and I are very happy. Sometimes she gets upset with me, but still, underneath it all, we laugh and we are really very happy. I think our children and our family basically are happy. If you are pouring your heart out to help other people, this brings you personal happiness. It's not the reason we do it because we see these children that. And of course, Bonnie has this mental condition called babies on the brain, and it's incurable. She just has to help babies and has to get them in her hands, and I have to keep trying to keep her from bringing them into the house because the house at one time was full of babies. We had 3 babies in diapers, and this was her way of getting happiness. It was a struggle for me, though. This is BabuKishan's Spotlight, Cultural Diversity, Multicultural Storytelling Profile.